All right, everyone, I thought that I would kindly remind people, haha, Bernie Sanders is still not in the race. Day two of him not being a presidential candidate. All those Bernie bros and stuff, the Bernie baby crowd that was rambling at me loud and long cross-platform about how wrong I was. Bernie can still do it. Most of the delegates aren't accounted for. Blah, blah, blah. Biden sucks. Um, it's funny because I haven't had a single one of these people apologize, including those that were calling me all sorts of atrocious names. Some of these people are really bigoted, by the way. And I don't expect that to happen. Like, they're going to be salty for a few days. Ultimately, though, 90% of you will vote for Biden or stay home. A very small proportion will write in Bernie or vote Trump out of malice and spite or something. But you got to understand, part of Bernie's coalition wasn't really Democrats anyway, at least not in the general sense, like historical Democratic voters. A lot of them would fit in more with the Green Party, and really, I mean, if you do believe in that kind of policy, and you're certainly not going to get any of that shit with Biden, because he's already lurched to the left, and he's considered a moderate now within what was the Dem field. If you like those policies, why don't you vote for the Greens? Or if you're economically more sane at this point, you can vote for the Libertarian Party since they've become an open borders mess, a satire of the libertarian movement. And there's several third parties you can vote for. I mean, Biden, look, Biden's probably going to lose. I've told people all along, Trump's got a 90% chance of winning. Yes, the fact that there's an economic downturn isn't great for him, and his coronavirus response is weighted as more mediocre now than at first. That's probably going to change. His support's probably going to rise. He's got a 90% chance of winning. He would have had a higher chance of winning against Bernie, by the way. Bernie Sanders failed. Bernie Sanders didn't even manage to gain traction really within his own, included party. Bernie Sanders' traction was very early. He spiked early, which I analyzed at the time. He manages to pop off a few wins. They were only mediocre, though. Remember, he basically tied with Buttigieg there. And then, who was it? He barely won in New Hampshire as well. If I remember correctly, he wins New Hampshire. He pulled off a bigger win in Nevada. Iowa, technically speaking, Buttigieg in the delegate count actually won. There's a very mild win for Bernie Sanders in the popular vote, and then a very mild delegate win in New Hampshire. While he was therefore technically the front runner, he had the most delegates, he had gotten the most votes at that time. It was only a matter of time before Biden came back after South Carolina. It was more like a temporary shudder in the force or something, according to the Dem sort of neoliberal establishment. By the way, it's interesting. The other day there was an opinion piece in the New York Times. I shared it out. Link was archived, of course, on Twitter, actually. Some dude analyzing the Democratic Party and talking about why Sanders lost and literally invoking the same trifold coalition sort of thing that I've been talking about now since about 2015. I thought it was interesting. I practically expected him to be using the term legacy media in the article because it was so similar. I'm now wondering to myself if some of these people don't actually watch my material. It should be funny. Probably do. At least they'll be more well informed. Anyway, no, Bernie Sanders is a spectacular failure. It's not just even a routine failure. He didn't even come close. In the last couple of contests, since Super Tuesday, and the wheels fell off the Bernie bus. Super Tuesday was the first nail in the coffin of his campaign, but it was really the subsequent two primaries and the 9 states that went thereafter, in which Bernie Sanders underperformed in every state and lost 8 out of 9 races. At that point, it became numerically impossible for him to become the nominee. Now, of course, technically speaking, he has suspended his campaign. That is, he's basically out, but he hasn't sort of crossed the T's and dotted the I's on dropping out so he can hold his delegates. He's going to be able to go to the convention if it exists at all, and he'll be able to give his speech and officially account his delegates to Biden in exchange for, he'll say, well, Joe, I've still got all of these delegates, and keep in mind that a lot of these races won't appoint delegates anyway under the DNC rules since they moved the primaries to the wrong date. They all spiked it to June. He'll go in there with a small number of delegates, but technically being the second place finisher, and he'll say, well, yeah, Joe, I'll make a speech on your behalf, I'll join your campaign, I'll sell out basically, but what's in it for me? I want a cabinet position or something. Now, of course, he's not going to get the position of running mate, and it would be a political suicide for Biden if he tried. He's already said that it'll be a female. I speculate Kamala Harris is number 1 on the list. Klobuchar is number 2. I have a sneaking suspicion that Warren and Gabbard and some of these others aren't even on the list. Gillibrand, I think, would, ironically, if he were going to choose female running mate, Gillibrand would be the best bet. The only problem is she never gained any traction at all. It would sort of be like a Tim Kaine choice or a Mike Pence choice. You take someone from the tertiary echelon of your party who's largely unknown and therefore they don't have too much baggage, who's reasonably, looks good for the cameras and is well-spoken, Tim Kaine aside, of course. Gillibrand fits that much more than anyone else. But I would say Kamala's the number 1 pick. And by the way, Biden will lose if he picks Kamala Harris. She's insufferable. Her optics are terrible. She's bad at debating. She's bad at speaking in a general sense anytime that she's antagonized. The only good thing about it is that right now you can't really actively campaign anyway. Right now he's got to choose a running mate fairly soon, by the way. He has to show us, if he gets elected, who will be the first female president who won't be elected. Because that's basically what will happen. Joe Biden is a sick man with dementia who's 77 years old. The writing is on the wall, dude. Most people, once they develop Alzheimer's, 4 years is a long time. After 4 years of Alzheimer's progression, usually a person is incapable of holding in their own shit. So Joe Biden would not be able to govern at that point. He would have to be removed from office or resign, and then whoever his VP is would become the first female president, and they wouldn't have been elected. I think that would be a crying shame. I think it would set back, any sort of women's lib, cracked glass ceiling stuff, probably by half a century. It would be atrocious. Anyway, Bernie lost, and that makes me happy. Very, very happy, as you can tell from the fact that I'm going to keep beating the dead horse, by the way, until flesh dissolves off of its rotten bones, because it's going to be great. Because all of these people, they kept trying to harass me, and, the leftist YouTube and all these groups. Bernie can still do it. Bernie's policies are actually better. Everyone likes Bernie. He even has some Republican support. He was never going to win, and now he's officially lost. It's funny because there are still a small number of them hanging on to their tattered hopes and dreams, like, well, he hasn't officially ended his campaign, he just suspended it. The dude's not campaigning. You look at what happens in the next few national polls, now that Bernie Sanders is kind of sort of technically not even in the race. Joe Biden will be riding up, really, he'll be unopposed. It'll be just like the Republican primaries. Most of these states, since they moved their dates anyway, should just fucking cancel their primaries. Biden has won. He will be the Dem nominee. And no, it's not going to be Hillary out of nowhere. It's not going to be, well, Cuomo's actually going to be... No. Cuomo's too busy sucking ass in New York. And he does suck ass. His projections were entirely wrong. He had caught in multiple lies. Trump is way more popular than Cuomo after this is all over, by the way. Another prediction. It's going to be funny to see Biden try to debate Trump. It might be a cyber debate, too. It might not even be in person because of bans on gatherings. At the very least, there's probably not going to be a live audience. It'd just be a moderator sitting there with Trump and Biden jabbing at each other. And they both can get hot under the collar. It'll be much more funny than watching Bernie blabber on because Bernie's predictable. Bernie says the same 4 or 5 stupid things over and over again in different ways. We already kind of know what he would say. Trump would have a real easy time debating Bernie because he's so predictable. Biden, you never know what crazy shit he's going to say. Sometimes he doesn't even know what position he takes on an issue at any given time. It's going to be one for the ages. That's about all. Peace out.